The sea is endless, a mirror of the sky above, and beneath its surface lie secrets untold through ages. Waves rise and fall like a heartbeat, steady yet filled with whispers of stories waiting to be heard. Among the gods of Olympus, none listened closer to the ocean's voice than Poseidon, lord of the deep. He was not only master of storms, but keeper of harmony, watching tides move with a rhythm beyond time. Yet even balance can falter, for the sea carried a murmur of unrest hidden within its shifting currents. Legends spoke of the Stormveil Crown, an artifact woven from lightning and coral, lost beneath eternal waters. Said to hold the whisper of winds and the memory of ancient waves, it could calm or awaken tempests. One night, as thunder rolled across distant shores, Poseidon felt the call stir like a chord in his soul. It was not a summons of war, nor a demand for conquest, but an invitation to restore what was lost. So begins a tale of ocean and sky, of questions answered in silence, and of power carried with humility. The evening on Olympus was quiet, stars shimmering above the marble halls like scattered jewels of fire. Yet Poseidon felt no peace, for deep within his heart the sea's murmur echoed louder than the mountain air. He turned his gaze westward, sensing waves rising with no wind, storms born without reason, breaking the ocean's song. The god of the sea could read currents like parchment, and now each tide spoke of unrest, tangled and heavy. It was as though the waters themselves whispered, not in words, but in pulses that struck chords within his soul. He closed his eyes and listened deeper. And in the silence, he heard the call of the Stormveil Crown. The legend was old, a tale shared by sea nymphs in songs woven with foam and carried by drifting gulls. They said the crown was not made by mortal hands, but shaped by lightning as it kissed the coral reef. It carried the memory of storms, the breath of winds, and the balance between calm seas and raging tempests. Long ago it had been lost, swallowed by tides, hidden where the sky and ocean touched in eternal embrace. Now its absence was felt, for storms grew restless, and the sea's rhythm broke like a harp with missing strings. Poseidon knew this was no ordinary storm, but a message, a beckoning, a plea carried through shifting waters. He stood upon the balcony of Olympus, waves echoing in his mind while thunder grumbled faintly in the distance. Though he was god of the sea, he never sought power for its own sake, only harmony for his realm. The calling of the crown was not about dominion, but about duty, to heal the wound between sky and sea. He walked slowly to the edge of his marble hall, trident gleaming, its tips catching starlight like three bright beacons. Below him the ocean stretched endlessly, and in their depths he felt the promise of answers yet unseen. The winds rustled softly, as if the very air awaited his choice, urging him to listen, urging him to act. He breathed deeply, the salt of memory filling him, remembering every ship guided, every shore guarded, every storm tamed. Then came the whisper again, a pulse through his veins, the undeniable truth that the crown was calling him home. For Poseidon, the journey would not be conquest, but a voyage of listening, of seeking, of restoring forgotten harmony. The sea had spoken, and he, its eternal guardian, could not turn away from its voice. And so, beneath the quiet stars and the trembling sky, the god of the oceans prepared to answer the call. In the stillness of dawn, Poseidon summoned the voices of the deep, calling forth his loyal court of the sea. From hidden grottos came the nymphs. Their laughter softened into concern as they gathered around the foaming tide. Tritons swam swiftly, carrying the echo of shells, their horns sounding notes of reverence that rippled through the water. Even dolphins rose in arcs, their silver bodies gleaming as if to answer their master's unspoken command. The ocean floor trembled faintly, not in fear, but in anticipation of words that would shape the currents of fate. Poseidon raised his trident, its light glimmering like a lighthouse, guiding ships across storm-kissed horizons. "My children of the tide," he spoke, his voice rolling deep. "The sea has whispered, and its harmony is broken." The nymphs bowed, their hair streaming like ribbons of seaweed, their eyes bright with ancient knowledge, long guarded in silence. They spoke of a prophecy carved into coral walls, a tale that only the waves remembered in fragments of song.
We must reach the shore.
The Stormveil Crown, they said, was the key to restoring the ocean's rhythm and soothing the restless tempests. One nymph, her voice as delicate as foam, told how the crown rested where sea and sky embraced as one. Another added that only a heart unchained by pride could hear the crown's true song and bear its endless weight. The Tritons struck their shells, each note a question. Was their lord ready to claim the burden of balance? Poseidon did not answer in haste, for he knew the crown was not treasure, but trial, a measure of purpose. The dolphins circled, playful yet solemn, as if reminding him that joy and duty must swim together in one stream. He listened to them all, the chorus of creatures, the hymn of waves, and the low hum of shifting tides. From every voice came a single truth, clear as sunlight through water. The crown must be found before storms grew wild. The sea's unrest would spread, breaking shores, confusing winds, and leaving silence where life once thrived in gentle rhythm. Poseidon lowered his trident, its glow softening, his heart steady as he gazed across the endless horizon. "This is not my burden alone," he said, "for the ocean sings through each of you, guiding the path forward." The nymphs nodded, their song weaving into the current, threads of guidance flowing like invisible maps beneath the waves. The Tritons raised their horns, promising to guard the depths and lend strength should the journey test his resolve. And the dolphins leapt high, a sign of hope, carrying lightness into the solemn vow that had now been spoken. Thus, the council of the depths ended not in fear, but in unity, each voice woven into the promise of harmony. Poseidon turned once more toward the sea's horizon, the call of the crown echoing clearer, urging him to begin. Poseidon stood at the edge of Olympus, the horizon painted in shades of dawn, the sea calling him below. He knew the path ahead was uncertain, for the Stormveil Crown was hidden in places where mortals dared not dream. The air trembled faintly as he descended, leaving behind marble halls for the boundless world of waves and tides. His trident gleamed with steady light, each point guiding him through veils of mist that curled like spirits in flight. The ocean welcomed him, currents swirling in recognition, a chorus of voices rising as he touched the water's skin. He stepped into the waves, not as conqueror, but as guardian, feeling the embrace of his true realm once more. Schools of fish shimmered like scattered jewels, parting before him as he sank deeper, their scales glowing in reverence. The dolphins followed joyfully, their leaps catching sunlit crests, laughter echoing like bells along the surface of the sea. Poseidon raised his hand, calming the waters, and the waves stilled, forming a clear path across the restless horizon. It was a journey both outward and inward, for the ocean demanded not strength of arms, but depth of spirit. He passed through whirlpools that twisted endlessly, yet each one parted at his presence, revealing calm corridors of blue. Mists drifted like veils, thick with secrets, carrying echoes of forgotten songs sung by winds in ancient times. Poseidon listened, knowing each riddle, Each current, each silence was a step toward the crown's hidden resting place. His heart was steady, though he felt the weight of expectation pressing like tides against the shores of his soul. From the depths came the songs of whales, long and mournful, weaving stories of storms and harmony lost to time. Their voices guided him, pointing toward horizons unseen, where sky bent low to kiss the rolling waters endlessly. Every creature seemed to share the burden, their movements flowing like threads in a tapestry guiding Poseidon's voyage. Yet he knew this path was his alone to walk, for the crown would test none but the god of seas. Lightning flickered faintly beyond the horizon, a reminder that storms awaited, restless until the crown was found again. But Poseidon's resolve did not falter, for he carried not ambition but devotion, seeking balance for all creation. The waves lifted him gently, bearing him forward like a cradle, the sea itself granting passage to its guardian. Behind him, Olympus faded into haze. Before him lay mystery, a voyage woven with both peril and promise. And thus the journey began, not with thunder or conquest, but with silence, faith, and the steady call of destiny. Poseidon's voyage carried him far across restless tides until a chain of islands rose like emeralds upon the sea. These were the Isles of Murmurs, places where winds were caught in caverns, and their voices sang eternal riddles. Each island shimmered with mist, cliffs rising steep and silent, yet the air trembled with whispers not made by men. Poseidon stepped upon the shore, the sand warm and golden, but every grain hummed faintly with hidden knowledge. The palm trees swayed though no wind stirred, their leaves rustling like words spoken in languages older than time. He followed the sound, his trident glowing softly, guiding him to a cavern carved by tides and eternal breath. Inside, the air shifted and turned, echoing with tones that rose and fell like the sighs of forgotten gods. The first cavern spoke in riddles of water, its voice like droplets striking stone, steady and patient as tides. Balance is not found in silence, the voice murmured, but in the song where storm and calm intertwine as one. Poseidon bowed his head, understanding the wisdom. For the sea itself was born of both fury and tranquility combined. He left the cavern, stepping back into light, and the path forward revealed another isle across shimmering waters. The second isle greeted him with caves that whistled, each note shaped by winds dancing through hollow stone pillars. The voice here was swifter, sharper, carrying riddles of air, freedom, and the invisible threads that wove sea to sky. Strength is not the hand that grasps, it said, but the hand that opens, letting currents move where they must. Poseidon listened, nodding slowly, for he knew the ocean did not trap, but carried, and winds were its kin. The dolphins leapt around him, their bodies arcing as if echoing the freedom the voice had spoken so clear. He moved onward, reaching the third isle, its cliffs dark and solemn, shadows stretching long upon the water's edge. The cavern here was deeper, echoing like thunder in the belly of mountains, its voice low and resolute. Power is not possession, it declared, but guardianship, the promise to bear weight without bending into pride. These words struck deep within Poseidon's heart, for he knew the Stormveil Crown would test this truth above all. He placed his trident upon the ground, letting its glow fade, and stood silent, embracing the lesson without defense. The cavern quieted, its echoes softening, and a single ray of light pierced the stone, pointing toward the horizon. Poseidon stepped forth, the sea greeting him once more, and the islands faded like dreams dissolving into the dawn. He carried with him not treasure, but wisdom, 3 truths etched upon his soul like stars upon the night. And thus the Isles of Murmurs had spoken, guiding his voyage onward, each whisper a key toward the hidden crown. Poseidon's journey brought him to a sea unlike any other, a vast expanse where waves had stilled into glass. The waters stretched endlessly smooth, reflecting the sky so perfectly that sea and heaven seemed to merge as one. Here, no wind stirred, no current moved, no bird flew above. Silence reigned heavy across the horizon's edge. The god of the sea felt unease, for stillness in the ocean was more troubling than the fiercest storm. He stepped lightly upon the surface, each motion sending faint ripples that faded too quickly into the mirror below. The dolphins that had followed him lingered at the edge, hesitant, their playful spirits hushed by the eerie calm. It was a place of trial, not of strength, but of spirit, where the ocean demanded patience over power. Poseidon listened, waiting for the familiar heartbeat of tides, yet the sea offered no voice, only silence profound. He closed his eyes, letting the absence of sound wash over him, a void pressing against his thoughts and heart. Memories rose within him, of storms tamed and sailors guided, of the trust that bound him to every wave. But the silence pressed deeper, asking without words. Would he demand control or surrender to the wisdom of stillness? Poseidon lowered his trident, allowing its light to dim, and for the first time in ages, he did not command. Instead, he knelt upon the mirrored sea, letting his hands rest upon its calm, unbroken surface without force. Time stretched endlessly, yet he did not falter, his patience as vast as the ocean's hidden depths. Then, at last, a ripple stirred beneath his palms, faint but true, the sea acknowledging his surrender with grace. The silence softened, becoming not void but presence, a quiet rhythm that spoke louder than thunder ever could. A whisper rose, not of words, but of feeling, a truth carried through the stillness into the god's heart. Only those who yield may hear the ocean's deepest song, the silence said, for harmony is born of surrender. Poseidon bowed his head, humbled, for he now understood that the crown would test not might, but humility. The waters brightened beneath him, glowing faintly as currents returned, weaving life and motion back into the sea. The dolphins leapt joyfully once more, their songs rising high, breaking the solemn air into waves of laughter. Poseidon rose, his trident glowing anew, but his heart was changed, carrying stillness as a companion to strength. The sea of still waters faded behind him, yet its lesson endured, etched upon his soul like an eternal tide. And thus he sailed onward, not with thunderous command, but with quiet resolve, guided by the wisdom of silence. The journey carried Poseidon into waters where colors danced in ways no mortal eye had seen nor could explain. The sea glowed with hues of emerald and sapphire, shifting like living silk across the rolling currents below. Coral towers rose from the depths, spiraling high as if reaching for the heavens, glowing faint with inner fire. Fish of radiant gold and silver swam in circles, their movements weaving patterns like constellations upon the sea. Here lay the sea of reflections, where the ocean showed not form but truth, the essence hidden in one's soul. As Poseidon approached, the waters shimmered, and his reflection did not match the face he bore in Olympus. Instead, he saw a younger self, wild and untamed, eyes bright with power, but heavy with restless pride. The image spoke without voice, reminding him of storms unleashed in anger, of tempests born from wounded pride. He stepped closer, the mirrors shifting, and now he saw sailors clinging to ships, their prayers lifted in fear. He saw mortals who had cursed his name, blaming the sea's rage for loss, never knowing its god heard them. For the first time in ages, Poseidon felt the sting of regret pierced deeper than any storm's lightning. He placed his trident against the mirrored water, and the images swirled, dissolving into new visions of peace. Children played along the shore, laughing as waves kissed their feet, offering joy instead of dread to their lives. Fishermen returned safely with nets full, giving thanks to the sea, their gratitude a melody that warmed the deep. The reflections showed him not only what had been, but what could be, if his heart chose balance over pride. Poseidon closed his eyes and whispered to the sea, a vow that his storms would serve harmony, not wrath. The waters glowed brighter, wrapping around him like threads of light, carrying the echo of his promise within. The dolphins at his side swam joyfully, leaping as if celebrating the quiet shift that touched their master's heart. From the coral towers, a gentle hum began, a song of the sea that welcomed his vow with solemn grace. The sea of reflections cleared, the waters calm, leaving only Poseidon's true form gazing back with steady eyes. He no longer saw power untamed, but strength tempered by humility, a god shaped by choices, not by fury. The trident pulsed with light. Its glow deepened, as if acknowledging his growth and the bond with ocean's truth. Poseidon turned away, his path clearer, knowing the Stormveil Crown would not yield to arrogance, but to wisdom. The coral towers faded into distance as he sailed onward, carrying both the weight of memory and the gift of hope. Thus, the sea itself became his guide, whispering not commands, but companionship, a reminder that gods, too, could learn. Poseidon sailed onward, guided by currents that shimmered with a hidden rhythm, like threads weaving his destined path. The waters darkened, not with anger, but with depth, as though the sea itself folded into endless layers of mystery. Here lay the abyssal chasm, a place whispered of in sailors' tales, where light hesitated to descend and linger. It was said the abyss guarded secrets of beginnings, where the first wave had risen and time itself had stirred. Poseidon paused at the edge, the dolphins circling close, their songs muted as they sensed the solemn power. He raised his trident, its glow piercing downward, revealing shadows that moved like living echoes across the deep. The abyss spoke not with voice, but with presence, a weight pressing upon his spirit, urging him to remember. Visions rose, not of storms or pride, but of silence before creation, when ocean and sky first touched. Poseidon beheld the forming of tides, the first breath of wind, the shaping of coral, the birth of whales. He saw life unfolding like a song, not commanded, but nurtured, growing strong beneath the watch of unseen eyes. The god felt small, not in weakness, but in awe, for the sea's beginnings reminded him of its vastness. He descended slowly, the abyss parting to reveal caverns adorned with crystals glowing faintly like constellations underwater. Each crystal pulsed with memory, fragments of laughter, cries, songs, and whispers carried through centuries by the ocean's waves. He touched one, and the voices rose. Countless lives intertwined with the sea, calling him guardian, guide, and witness. The weight of duty deepened, not as burden, but as trust. For every ripple had always carried mortal hope. Poseidon listened, humbled, realizing the crown was not forged to command storms, but to honor the sea's memory. At the heart of the abyss, a shell of silver light opened, revealing a fragment of the Stormveil Crown. It glowed faintly, not demanding power, but waiting to be claimed by one who understood its quiet purpose. Poseidon reached out, yet hesitated, for he now knew this was no prize but a vow etched in coral. He placed his hand gently upon it, not seizing but accepting, and the fragment pulsed warmly with recognition. The abyss stirred, not with danger, but with release. as currents rose, carrying him upward like a hymn fulfilled. The dolphins leapt around him, voices bright once more, celebrating the gift of memory that he now carried. Poseidon emerged into open waters, the abyss fading behind, yet its lesson remained like a steady tide within him. He held the fragment close, not as treasure, but as reminder. The sea's crown belonged to those who remembered. And with that truth, he turned his gaze ahead, knowing the path forward would test his heart still further. Poseidon sailed onward, guided by currents that shimmered with a hidden rhythm, like threads weaving his destined path. The waters darkened, not with anger, but with depth, as though the sea itself folded into endless layers of mystery. Here lay the abyssal chasm, a place whispered of in sailors' tales, where light hesitated to descend and linger. It was said the abyss guarded secrets of beginnings, where the first wave had risen and time itself had stirred. Poseidon paused at the edge, the dolphins circling close, their songs muted as they sensed the solemn power. He raised his trident, its glow piercing downward, revealing shadows that moved like living echoes across the deep. The abyss spoke not with voice, but with presence, a weight pressing upon his spirit, urging him to remember. Visions rose, not of storms or pride, but of silence before creation, when ocean and sky first touched. Poseidon beheld the forming of tides, the first breath of wind, the shaping of coral, the birth of whales. He saw life unfolding like a song, not commanded but nurtured, growing strong beneath the watch of unseen eyes. The god felt small, not in weakness but in awe, for the sea's beginnings reminded him of its vastness. He descended slowly, the abyss parting to reveal caverns adorned with crystals glowing faintly like constellations underwater. Each crystal pulsed with memory, fragments of laughter, cries, songs, and whispers carried through centuries by the ocean's waves. He touched one, and the voices rose, countless lives intertwined with the sea, calling him guardian, guide, and witness. The weight of duty deepened, not as burden, but as trust, for every ripple had always carried mortal hope. Poseidon listened, humbled, realizing the crown was not forged to command storms, but to honor the sea's memory. At the heart of the abyss, a shell of silver light opened, revealing a fragment of the Stormveil Crown. It glowed faintly, not demanding power, but waiting to be claimed by one who understood its quiet purpose. Poseidon reached out, yet hesitated, for he now knew this was no prize but a vow etched in coral. He placed his hand gently upon it, not seizing but accepting, and the fragment pulsed warmly with recognition. The abyss stirred, not with danger, but with release, as currents rose, carrying him upward like a hymn fulfilled. The dolphins leapt around him, voices bright once more, celebrating the gift of memory that he now carried. Poseidon emerged into open waters, the abyss fading behind. Yet its lesson remained like a steady tide within him. He held the fragment close, not as treasure, but as reminder. The sea's crown belonged to those who remembered. And with that truth, he turned his gaze ahead, knowing the path forward would test his heart still further. The sea grew restless as Poseidon sailed toward a horizon crowned with thunderclouds, their edges burning with light. Lightning flickered within their depths, weaving like silver serpents, and the air carried the weight of brewing storms. This was the tempest expanse, the final trial whispered by the waves, where the Stormveil Crown's power fully awakened. The dolphins swam close, yet even they grew cautious, their voices hushed as though honoring the solemn majesty. Poseidon felt the crown fragment within his hand tremble, as if sensing its other half waiting amidst the storm. He raised his trident, its glow steady, not to challenge the sky, but to stand ready for what lay ahead. The winds rose, pulling the sea upward in towering waves. Yet he stood firm, his heart aligned with silence. The storm spoke with thunder, not in anger, but in testing, as though questioning the worth of its chosen bearer. Will you rule with fear, or guide with trust? The storm roared, each bolt striking the sea with radiant fire. Poseidon closed his eyes, remembering the lessons of stillness, of reflection, of memory, each trial guiding his heart. He lifted his trident high, not in defiance, but in offering, allowing the storm to see his vow renewed. "I am not master of the sea," he whispered, his voice steady. "I am its guardian and its servant." The storm stilled for a moment, clouds parting slightly, revealing the faint outline of the Stormveil Crown complete. It descended slowly, not with weight, but with grace, settling before Poseidon upon the waves like a gift. The dolphins leapt around him, their songs rising as the crown shone bright, woven of lightning, coral, and ocean breath. He took it gently, placing it upon his brow, and at once the storm dissolved into calm, radiant peace. The waves stilled, the sky cleared, and a light spread across the horizon, golden and warm like dawn's embrace. The crown did not make him greater, but reminded him of who he was, bound to harmony, not conquest. The sea sang around him, a song older than God's, carrying gratitude that reached every shore, every heart and kind. Mortals looked to the waters and saw them shimmer, unaware that a vow had been fulfilled deep within the tides. Poseidon smiled, his heart lighter, for the journey had not given him power, but had restored balance within. He turned his gaze homeward, not as conqueror, but as keeper, carrying the crown as symbol of duty and grace. The dolphins danced ahead, guiding his way, their laughter mingling with the ocean's song as he returned. And so the Stormveil Crown was no longer lost, but carried by a god who had learned to listen. The seas stretched wide and calm as Poseidon journeyed homeward, the Stormveil Crown resting lightly upon his brow. No thunder followed him now, only gentle tides, as if the ocean itself exhaled with relief at its guardian's vow. The dolphins swam ahead in joyful arcs, their songs echoing across the surface like laughter stitched into the wind. Every ripple seemed alive with harmony, carrying both memory and promise, as though the sea itself had been renewed. On distant shores, mortals looked out and felt peace, their hearts eased by tides no longer ruled by restless storms. Children played at the water's edge, chasing foam that shimmered gold, unaware of the god whose hand calmed the sea. Sailors raised their eyes to the horizon and gave thanks, their voices lifted with gratitude instead of trembling prayers. The Stormveil Crown did not blaze with might, but glowed faintly, a symbol not of conquest, but of gentle guidance. Poseidon touched it often, not in pride, but as a reminder of trials faced and lessons carried deep within. He recalled the still waters that taught him patience, the reflections that showed regret, the abyss that revealed beginnings. Each memory was a tide in his heart, weaving together humility, duty, and love for the boundless ocean. Olympus awaited him. Yet he no longer thought of standing above, but of walking alongside both gods and mortals. For he had seen that true power was not in commanding storms, but in honoring the sea's eternal balance. As he neared his halls beneath the waves, creatures gathered, whales, dolphins, turtles, and fish, singing in wordless chorus. Their voices rose like a hymn, carrying his return across every current, reaching even the farthest hidden depths. Poseidon stood still, humbled by their welcome. For the ocean had chosen to embrace him, not as ruler, but as keeper. The crown pulsed softly, threads of lightning and coral weaving with the rhythm of waves, alive with ancient harmony. He knew now it was not his to own, but his to guard, a covenant between God and sea forever bound. The dolphins leapt high one last time, showering silver spray like stars falling back into the waiting ocean below. Poseidon raised his trident and let its glows soften, not his command, but his blessing, a promise to protect. The waters around him brightened, not with storm or fury, but with calm vastness, a mirror of his renewed heart. The sea whispered, its voice steady and clear, not in thunder, but in quiet truth. You have listened, and we are one. And so the tale closed not with conquest, but with harmony. A god returned, carrying crown and wisdom alike. For the Stormveil Crown was never truly lost. It had only waited for one willing to hear the ocean's song. The sea lay calm as dawn broke, waves stretching out like silver threads beneath the awakening sky. Poseidon stood at the heart of his domain, the Stormveil Crown glowing softly, no longer heavy with burden. It rested upon his brow as a symbol, not of conquest, but of a vow made between God and ocean. Around him, dolphins leapt, their joyful arcs painting the horizon with songs of celebration and gentle farewell. Whales surfaced, releasing fountains of mist that glittered like stars dissolving into daylight above the rolling tides. Fish darted in bright shoals beneath the waves, weaving patterns that mirrored the dance of shifting constellations. Every creature of the sea gathered close, not in fear or command, but in trust and reverence. The ocean was no longer wild with storm or restless rage, but balanced, a harmony restored through trials. Poseidon lifted his trident high, and its glow shimmered softly, a beacon not of power, but of promise. He looked upon the crown, feeling its pulse like a quiet heartbeat, alive with the rhythm of waves. It was no treasure to hoard, nor prize to wield, but a covenant between him and the sea. He remembered the abyss, the shadows, the silence, and the light, each test shaping him in unseen ways. He had faced reflection and regret, stillness and storm, learning that mastery was not command, but deep listening. For the ocean did not bow to strength. It opened only to those who honored its eternal balance. Now mortals gazed upon the waters with peace, their lives gentled by tides no longer sharpened with fury. Sailors cast off with courage, whispering prayers of thanks, carried not by fear, but by quiet confidence. Children played along the shore, laughter echoing over foam and sand, unaware of the god's silent watch. And in Olympus, whispers carried of Poseidon's return, not as rival, but as keeper of balance renewed. He walked no longer with pride alone, but with humility, his heart tied to both sky and sea. The Stormveil Crown glowed brighter for a moment, then softened, its light blending with the calm horizon. Poseidon lowered his trident and let the waves settle, knowing the sea did not need to roar. It only needed to breathe, to carry, to shelter, and to speak in the language of tides eternal. The chorus of the ocean rose, not as thunder, but as music woven from every current and stream. It was a song of unity, of journeys faced and wisdom gained, echoing across waters and hearts alike. Poseidon closed his eyes and listened, letting the melody weave into his spirit, timeless and infinite. For he knew now the greatest power was not to rule the sea, but to be part of it. And so the story of the Stormveil Crown did not end with victory, but with harmony reborn. A god had returned not as conqueror, but as guardian, carrying crown and covenant into endless tides. And the ocean whispered back, eternal and steady, "We are one, forever and always."